Okay, at this time, I will call to order the Tuesday, October 1st, 2019 meeting of the Iredell County Board of Commissioners. I want to welcome you all this evening. At this time, if everyone would please bow your head for a moment of silent prayer and reflection. Okay, at this time, we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would ask that Thomas Sapp please come up. He is going to be speaking to us about a proclamation for Red Ribbon Week, and he's part of the Mecklenburg County Young Marines, and if you would lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Thomas, I don't think you need to go very far. You can come on back up. Our first item on the agenda is a request from Thomas Sapp of the Mecklenburg County Young Marines to adopt a proclamation recognizing October 23rd through 31st, 2019 as Red Ribbon Week. And the proposed proclamation by the Iredell County Board of Commissioners for Red Ribbon Week is whereas communities across America have been plagued by the numerous problems associated with illicit drug use and those who traffic in them, and whereas there is hope in winning the war on drugs, and that hope lies in education and drug demand reduction, coupled with the hard work and determination of organizations such as the Mecklenburg County Young Marines of the Marine Corps League to foster a healthy, drug-free lifestyle, and whereas Mr. Thomas Sapp of Mooresville is a member of the Mecklenburg County Young Marines, and whereas governments and county leaders know that citizen support is one of the most effective tools in the effort to reduce the use of illicit drugs in our communities, and whereas Red Ribbon has been chosen as a symbol commemorating the work of Enrique Kiki Camarena, a Drug Enforcement Administration special agent who was murdered in the line of duty and represents the belief that one person can make a difference. Whereas the Red Ribbon Campaign was established by Congress in 1988 to encourage a drug-free lifestyle and involvement in drug prevention and reduction efforts, and whereas October 23rd through 31st has been designated National Red Ribbon Week, which encourages Americans to wear a red ribbon to show their support for a drug-free environment. Is there a motion to adopt the proclamation?
So moved.
Motion to adopt the proclamation by Commissioner Hout. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, we, the Iredell County Board of Commissioners, do hereby proclaim October 23rd through 31st as Red Ribbon Week in Iredell County and urge all citizens to join in this special observance adopted this first day of October 2019. So, Thomas, if you could share a few words with the assembled crowd here, and I'll present this to you in a second.
So, Red Ribbon Week is named after Enrique Kiki Camarena, who was DEA agent who was killed in the line of duty. So that's what they named the Red Ribbon Week after for. And so I'm Lance Corporal Thomas Sapp from Mecklenburg County Young Marines. On behalf of Mecklenburg County Young Marines, I'd like to thank you and the Board of Commissioners for allowing this proclamation to go through.
Good job.
Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate all you do. I mean, put gas in our tanks. Squared away like we grew up.
Thank you, sir.
Good job, Thompson. That's a who there. Yeah, you got 3 Army veterans up here that hua, not oorah.
They'll learn to pronounce it right one
Yeah,
day.
that's right. Okay, the second item on the agenda is a request from Patti West, Executive Director of Diakonos Inc, Fifth Street Ministries, to adopt a proclamation recognizing October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And is Patti here?
She is.
There you are. Come on up and...
Yeah, just come to.
Just come on up.
Either way.
Yeah. And you can stand right here, then I'll read this for the record. Domestic Violence Awareness Month, County of Iredell, State of North Carolina, a proclamation. Each year, during the month of October, we acknowledge domestic violence as an ongoing issue and recommit ourselves to reducing domestic violence within our community. Despite the significant progress we have made in addressing domestic violence, statistics available from the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence estimate that 4 women die as a result of domestic violence each day. Furthermore, the statistics show that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 13 men nationally will experience domestic violence during their lifetime. And a domestic or dating violence incident takes place every 24 minutes in the United States. These statistics are sobering, particularly when considering the reality that domestic violence is generally one of the most underreported crimes. The long-term effects of domestic violence are staggering, and exposure puts individuals in danger of long-term physical, psychological, and emotional harm. The trauma experienced by individuals related to domestic violence typically causes an adverse ripple effect on the emotional and psychological state of a survivor. Panic attacks, post-traumatic stress disorder, substance abuse, depression, and anxiety are often ignited by domestic violence and or other forms of related abuse. Children who experience domestic violence, for example, are at a greater risk for failure in school, emotional disorders, substance use, and are statistically more likely to perpetuate the cycle of violence in later life. It is often assumed that domestic violence only occurs in lower-income minority or rural communities. The truth is that domestic violence can happen to anyone and anywhere, regardless of who they are and what they do for a living or where they live. Let us formally recognize Domestic Violence Awareness Month as a public health issue right here in our own community, and to commit ourselves once again to continue working on issues related to addressing domestic violence. And I want to point out that Patti West has worked with Fifth Street Ministries for, 30 years, helping to minister to people with a wide range of needs. And as time has gone on, more and more women have been in the domestic violence protection programs that are available through Fifth Street and other organizations. And we very much appreciate your dedication to serving those who are not able to protect themselves. So is there a motion?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Therefore, the Iredell County Board of Commissioners pledge the support of our governing body to continue educating, connecting, and inspiring our community to end domestic violence in Iredell County, North Carolina. October 2019 is therefore proclaimed as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. All citizens are encouraged to join in working together each day throughout the year to end domestic violence in our community. Patti, on behalf of the Iredell County Board of Commissioners,
Thank you.
At this time, we'll move on to item 7, public hearings. Our first item, 7.1, is a public hearing to consider the adoption of the 2021 Public Transportation Program Resolution. And our ICATS Transit Director, Bradley Johnson, will tee that up for us.
Good evening. Tonight's the request that ICATS has before you is for a public hearing for the North Carolina Department of Transportation and the FTA transportation grants for public transportation. The grant request is for 5 grants totaling $1.57 million. The grant is a mixture of operating, administrative, and capital. The capital grant is for $550,000. That's for replacement of 3 vehicles, 1 service vehicle, and a driving training simulator. The administrative grant is for $253,005. That will fund a portion of 5 potential salaries. And then there's 3 operating grants totaling $768,584. One is for the 5307 operating grant that covers the 50% of the cost of the fixed route services that we offer, the Statesville Bloom, the Mooresville, Maine, Community Connection, and the Iredell Express. We also are applying for a Traveler's Aid Grant, which is the second year we're applying for it. It covers transportation for disadvantaged individuals, victims of domestic violence, or stranded travelers in need of transportation assistance. And then we're also applying for a Rural State Operating Assistance Grant. This grant has not actually been released yet, but we expect it will be released within the next 6 to 8 weeks. And there's a very short turnaround time on it, so we wanted to go ahead and have the public hearing for that as well. The local match for all the combined grants is $477,243. The matching funds will come from revenue generated by ICATS and the state rope allotment funds. It is a requirement of the commissioners to adopt a resolution authorizing myself as the transportation director to apply for the grants on the behalf of Iredell County.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from commissioners? I just want to say that, our ICAT system is well run, it's efficient. The bulk of the funds come from outside the county to provide this service. Bradley, could you just very briefly discuss, you mentioned the Statesville, the Mooresville sort of loops, and there's also the transportation down through Mecklenburg County that connects to CATS that can take you into Charlotte, as well as, the individual routes that you run, helping people get to medical appointments and dialysis treatment and such.
Yeah, we also have a community connection route. It goes from Statesville down to Mooresville. It begins and ends at Mitchell campuses in both Statesville and Mooresville, but it also goes down Highway 21. One of the problems that we ran into was that people didn't only need transportation back and forth from one campus to the other, they needed transportation to the school and then to be able to get from campus to campus. And so as we go up and down 21, we're picking individuals up along the route there. There's 6 different stops. But then we also have a demand response service where we cover the complete county. We do 140,000 trips a year. We're growing rapidly. So, we cover the complete county.
Well, is there a motion?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by...
Mr. Chairman, we need to have a public hearing.
Okay, that's right. All right. First, I have to open the public hearing, but I don't think I had anybody signed up to be heard. Okay. I'd inquire of anyone in the audience whether you'd like to be heard on this. I'll close the public hearing and ask if there's a motion. Motion approved by Commissioner Norman. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Appreciate it. Okay, the next item that we have that I think will be of interest to the vast majority of the people in attendance, and do we have the sign-up list? Right. All right. Thank you. Is to discuss the potential for issuing a general obligation bond in the amount of, we'll say, $125 million plus the cost for the issuance of the bond, in order to build 2 new schools, a middle school in Mooresville Graded School District, a new high school in the south central eastern quadrant of Iredell County, as well as a construction of an instructional pad for driving by Mitchell Community College. We have decided to have this public hearing not because it's required. There's actually a requirement to have a public hearing when the resolution is actually adopted, and then subsequently in early December in all likelihood. But we wanted to start this process off by getting as much community feedback and the opportunity to share with the general public the rationale and why we're considering this move at this time. And so a few weeks ago, we received a report from our facility task force, which is a group that has worked for the better part of a year and a half to evaluate the needs of Iredell County school systems, Iredell Statesville Schools, Mooresville Graded School District, and our Mitchell College campuses to determine over the next 10 years what kind of capital needs that they were forecasting. And they came back and presented to us at our winter retreat in February their first report. They updated that report in a presentation in August, and it was obvious to us that if we did the phase 1 piece, which is the first 3 years, that we were going to have to be able to have a bond issuance to be able to take care of the 2 major projects that were requested, which is the Mooresville Graded School District Middle School and the South Iredell High School. We looked at this from purely a capacity perspective. The last bond that was issued in North Carolina, or Iredell County, was 4.5 years ago, and it was for roughly $150 million, and it covered a whole range of different projects, most of which were replacing older buildings with newer schools, adding some capacity where we needed to, particularly in elementary and middle schools, and expanding and renovating capacity at Mooresville Graded High School. Those projects covered the entire county. The first tranche of, and by the way, after that bond required us to service that $150 million with about a 4.25% increase, 4.25 cent increase in the property tax rate. The projects that were approved, because the projects were implemented in a phased approach, and because we were able to get a lower interest rate on our bonds, because we do have a AAA bond rating with at least one of the bond rating agencies and the highest AA in the others, we were able to save dollars in that process. And at the end, we had about $21 million of funds that had been collected but not spent. So our initial discussions that we had with the Facilities Task Force was, after their presentation, to say, well, what can we do for phase 1 with that $21 million and allocate that out to the school systems so that they can start in on that those projects as far as it will take them. And in fact, it enabled them to deal with virtually all of the projects that they needed to do other than the middle school for Mooresville graded and the high school for Iredell-Statesville schools. So we've already addressed some of those issues, but one of the concerns is, well, if a bond is requested but does not pass, then we want to make sure that that $21 million was actually allocated based on the right priority. It could change how we look at how those funds ought to be executed. But we feel with an aggressive timeline that we'll know earlier as opposed to later that whether those decisions are in fact correct. So we will be dispersing those funds as the school systems execute the projects. So today we want to take advantage of the opportunity for everyone here to hear the information that was developed by the task force and how the 3 school entities and their boards, which, by the way, at our request, reviewed what was left on the table and have all, by board actions, requested that we place this matter on the ballot for approval to be able to issue a bond to build these 2 schools. This is a capacity-only bond. It's creating seats, and that's the sole focus. And as a result, that focus has to be where the demand is. So this isn't like, trying to get, but I'll say this, the placement of these schools in the southern area of the county is where the demand is, and it's also where the majority of the growth is. And that growth is essential to Iredell County's maintaining a low tax rate, because if we attract industry and industry attracts people, those dollars that industry puts in overcompensate for the cost of residential development. And that's enabled us to maintain about the 13th lowest tax rate in the state of North Carolina, and the lowest tax rate of any of our 9 contiguous counties that touch us, and we touch more counties than any other in the state of North Carolina, and it's lower than any county in the metro Charlotte region to boot. So we've been very focused on maintaining a low tax rate. We are essentially a nickel lower than our closest competitor, which is Catawba County. And so that's always been, very at the forefront of our considerations. And what we have been briefed on, just to give you some perspective, as I mentioned, to fund that $150 million 4.5 years ago, we had increased taxes about 4.25 cents. Because we've had success in growing the economy and growing business and getting low interest rates, what our financial staff has been able to put together is the fact that in order for us to achieve about we'll just say $130 million roughly bond, will result in an increase of property taxes of 1 penny. So the difference is 3.25 cents to borrow, in rough terms, pretty much the same amount of dollars. And that's a result of growing the economy so that we can keep our tax rate low. And that's a big shout out to our school systems, because economic development and education are joined at the hip, and workforce development is the long pole in the tent when it comes to businesses choosing to locate in Iredell County. So just to tee that up, what I would ask is we're going to have a series of little presentations that will give you more detail and perspective from the 3 systems involved, the college and Iredell-Statesville and Mooresville graded, and then a perspective from Commissioner Robertson concerning from the County Commission perspective, and then we will open up the floor for comments after that. So, who wants to be first? Brady, you want to? This is Brady Johnson, who is the superintendent of Iredell Statesville Schools.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Chairman Mallory, Commissioners, Ms. Jones. We appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and speak on behalf of our school system. And I'd like to begin my remarks by simply saying that the work that you've embarked in over the last few weeks is a true profile in courage. And we do appreciate you looking down the road long term and taking seriously the long-term needs of the kids in this community and all three of the school systems, as well as the economic prosperity and the growth of our county. When I was here a few months ago, one of the statements that was made by Chairman Mallory that really hit me hard was that Iredell County is on track to double in population in the next 20 to 25 years. Just let that sink in. 20 to 25 years, our community is going to double in population. The map that you see there in front of you tonight is showing some of the developments that are already in process in the southern end of our county. It shows the entire county, but you can see most of that development is taking place in the southern end of the county. We have two projects. South Iredell High School, which is over 50 years old. We have Lake Norman High School, which is 20 years old. Both of those schools currently today are out of capacity. So when you look at that map and you see all these developments coming, the question for us is, where are we going to place those children in this 20-year period that's coming down the pike when our population is going to double in our community? You know, for school systems, basically, we have a couple of options to address rapid growth like we're seeing in the southern end of the county. We can, of course, come to you folks and ask to build schools. That's one option. Another option that we have is to move children around. We can put children on buses, and we can ship them to other parts of the county where there's empty seat space. Now, I'll tell you what, that comes at a price too. It comes in additional ride times. It comes in the cost of purchasing buses and hiring additional drivers. So everything is related, and everything is kind of like a bowl of jelly. If you punch it over here, it's going to jiggle over there. So that option comes with consequences and an impact that I quite frankly don't know that the parents in this community are willing to consider. Another option that we do have is mobile units. Now, at both of those schools, and I would invite you to come down and take a walking tour with us. We'll be glad to walk you around Lake Norman High School and South Iredell High School, and you'll see that there's already mobile units there. And as I think about those mobile units, that is a temporary solution. It's an expensive temporary solution to a problem like we're facing. So I don't think anybody, when you're dealing with taxpayers' money, wants to throw good money after bad ideas. There are times when you have to use mobile units, but there are times when it's time to talk about brick and mortar. And I think we are at that stage. We've been using mobile units on those campuses for a number of years now. And with the projected growth that we're seeing, I don't think we can afford to put mobile units on those pieces of property. I'd also like to say tonight that the work that we're talking about did not originate with us. It did not originate with any of the school leaders. The projects that were identified came from the Facilities Task Force. There's many of those task force members here tonight. And those are all citizens. These are our neighbors who volunteered their time to come in. And they spent a lot of time over this 2-year period pouring through documents and making these recommendations. So those decisions were not made lightly. But I do want to thank them for the energy and the time that they put into helping us identify the most critical needs in our school system. The final point that I'd like to ask you to consider tonight is let's talk about if we get an opportunity to put this idea before the citizens and the bond is not successful, then what? What's our other options? For our school system, it's going to be this. We're going to have to siphon money away from our reoccurring capital budget on an annual basis to buy those trailers and buy those buses and scatter these children all over the county. And that's not a wise use of taxpayers' money. So I do want to thank you for bringing this debate forward. And I would say tonight that I hope that the debate doesn't end here tonight. A question this big really needs to go outside these walls. It really needs to be put before the citizens, the hardworking taxpayers in this community who can decide if they want to invest in their public schools or not. But I do thank you for this opportunity, and I will yield back any time that I have remaining. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Dr. Steve Mooney?
Good evening, Commissioners, Ms. Jones. My name is Stephen Mooney. I'm the superintendent from the Mooresville Graded School District. And like Mr. Johnson, I would like to say thank you for holding this meeting to hear input about a potential bond referendum for our county schools. As the superintendent of a public school system, I feel the weight of my responsibility is to provide our children of our community with a sound education while keeping them safe and meeting their needs. And one of the greatest responsibilities is partnering with our families to ensure that this happens. And so what we are doing in Mooresville Graded, and I am confident in saying the same in ISS and for Mitchell, is that we take this responsibility very seriously, and that's why I'm here tonight. Currently, our middle school, Mooresville Middle School, has an enrollment of 1,040 students. Its population has increased by almost 350 students in less than 10 years. The halls, the cafeteria, the classrooms are very crowded, and we are using every classroom for instructional purposes. As a public school districts, we are charged with the care of our county's children. However, we have to rely on the support and goodwill of others to carry out that charge. We do not have the power ourselves to stop the growth within our districts, nor the power to single-handedly build new facilities when that growth creates overcrowding in our schools. It's during times like these that we must rely on you, our commissioners, to provide the opportunities to fund our facility needs. And so I'm here tonight to request that you place a bond referendum on the March 2020 ballot. Members of our school board are here tonight, and they have unanimously supported this ask, and with a formal resolution that they passed last month. I understand that decisions like this are not easy ones to make, especially with the needs of Iredell Statesville Schools, Mitchell Community College, and Mooresville Graded, all included in the same bond. But in order to keep that bond amount at a minimum, I know that the three educational entities in conjunction with the facility task force, which Mr. Johnson mentioned, have worked very hard and focused our needs just on the most significant ones. And to this point, I can say that in Mooresville Graded, that we are looking at some options to privately finance some of the renovations on two of our projects, our two of our three elementary schools that have significant needs. And the purpose of that is to remove them from the overall bond package and therefore reduce the amount of the total bond. Because at one time we all have needs, but we also have to be realistic in what our county will support and what our people will vote for. And so, like I said, I know these decisions are tough ones. They affect all of us, myself included, as a citizen of Iredell County. But the decision becomes much easier when we keep our children at the forefront of our why. And I want to thank you again for your consideration of the referendum. And I respectfully request on the behalf of the Mooresville Graded School District that you place the bond on the March 2020 ballot.
Thank you, Dr. Mooney. Dr. Tim Brewer.
Good evening, Commissioners and community members. On behalf of the Board of Trustees at Mitchell Community College, our faculty and staff, and most importantly, our students, we're grateful for the opportunity to stand before you this evening and share with you our requests related to this bond discussion. Many of you well know that Mitchell Community College for a number of years has led this county in training for law enforcement through our BLET, Basic Law Enforcement Training Program, our Fire Safety Training Program, our EMS, and our Paramedic Program. Much like our public school partners have already indicated and we're all aware of, we are also experiencing great growth in this training area. Because of the population growth and the need for these services, our programs have reached its maximum in capacity for where we are currently located. Most of these programs are housed in the D. Matt Thompson building in the basement, in a building that will soon be 100 years old. Our need also includes, more specifically, the need for driving facilities. Each one of the programs that I mentioned to you need to have space for training for driving. Our basic law enforcement training program currently does its tactical driving on the back parking lot at the main building here in Statesville. The pursuit training currently is being produced, or we're doing that at the Statesville Airport, and for good reasons. Because of the growth at the Statesville Airport, we're not able to access that facility as much as we need to. These programs serve everyone in this county. Each of our communities, each of our municipalities, Mooresville, Statesville, and all the volunteer fire departments, and many of the law enforcement agencies throughout the county, the Sheriff's Department, Mooresville, and Statesville, receive their training from Mitchell Community College. So therefore, on behalf of our board, our students, we are grateful for the opportunity to share this information with you, but also encourage you and ask you to include this, include this in your discussion about a bond program. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brewer. Okay, at this time, we'll have Commissioner Robertson, who will share some perspectives and some information.
We have a laser pointer up there.
We do. It's on the remote.
This is a little odd. The reason I'm coming down here is our clicker doesn't work from up there, so it's hard to advance the slides. Hope that you can hear me. Occasionally I'm going to have to turn my back to you so I can follow a little bit about where we're going. My name's Ken Roberts, and I'm one of the Iredell County Commissioners, clearly. I spent 12 years on this board before, and I've come back to fill the obligation of, or fill the term of Jeff McNeely, who went on to Raleigh to fill Rena Turner's vacancy. When I got on the board, we started talking about school funding, and I realized, holy cow, we really can't talk about how to spend money today unless we really know what the future is going to look like a little bit better. And a high school is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. If we can't address this and fix this, almost all of our other discussions have to change. And that's why our board said, hey, we need to get out in front of this, and instead of just talking about how to appropriate that amount of money that General Mallory talked about before, we said we really got to deal with this high school issue first. Now, I'm going to tell you, true confessions. We're all Republicans on this board. We're all conservatives. I was a leader in the Republican Party. Tommy Bowles was a commissioner on this Board of Commissioners when the GO bond came up for a vote to build Lake Norman High School. When you're a conservative and somebody says, we have a good idea to do X, it doesn't matter what it is, but it's going to require your taxes to go up, you automatically have resistance to the idea. And I did too. And Tommy did too.
And I was a leader in the Republican Party at the time. We didn't oppose it, but we didn't support it. And I would say Tommy, as a commissioner, fell kind of in that grouping. That GO bond failed. So just because something's needed, if good men and women sit back and do nothing, it can fail again. I want you to imagine what this county would be like if the largest high school in the county today did not exist. You go, well, if the bond failed, how did it pass? I'm going to tell you how it passed. The chairwoman sitting up there was Miss Sarah Hare Tice. And she and that board that Tommy was on, and he voted to do this, voted to borrow the money without the consent of the taxpayers during a revaluation year which required a tax increase in a reval year, and they built that high school. Let me tell you what, the Iron Lady wasn't Margaret Thatcher in England. It was Sarah Hare Tice in Iredell County. Sarah, I hope you're listening. I owe you that one. So coming from that perspective of resistance to spending big money and doing something that will require a tax increase, the three gentlemen that just stood up and talked, they talked a lot about option A, which is the bond. I want to address the question, do we really need it? What does it look like if we don't have it? And I have an option for that. So, why do we need to build anything? To build or not to build? That's the question. Now, if you look, there's going to be people who say, we've got plenty of capacity in our high schools. And just so you know, Mooresville Graded School District, I'm not going to talk about middle schools. Because I think most people, when we frame this bond debate, they can get their arms around the high schools. It's a finite number. Most people know the names of all the high schools. And to me, I think this is where we focus a lot of our discussion. The state has a formula for what the capacity of the high school is. The county, the local school system also has a formula where they tell us what the capacity of that high school is. So there's going to be some folks that tell you that state formula says that we don't need a high school today. In fact, they'll tell you that we have excess capacity today. And if you believe in the Soviet form of education where Big Brother knows best, then adopt the state's number. But if you want to use the capacity as defined by the people who work in those buildings every single day, we are at full capacity right now. Right now. So, you're going to hear a lot of people throw numbers out. But I'm going to tell you the numbers that you ought to believe. Do you believe that if you believe that the state government is more accurate than the local government, then you must believe that the federal government is more accurate than the state government. And if that's the case, I want you to check your party affiliation. Look at the number of existing mobile classrooms. At Lake Norman and at South Iredell, we already have 2 mega units. We are already wheeling in trailers. Now let me tell you, as somebody who was involved with the last great big push of expansion of school capacity in Iredell County, I will tell you, we lost almost all of our playgrounds and recreational areas as we took them away from schools that we had built that had plenty of room so that after school Little Johnny could go to soccer practice at his school, have baseball practice at his school, have football practice at his school, and we filled him up with trailers, and then after that we filled him up with buildings. So now mom's got to go pick up Junior, mom or dad's got to pick up Junior, drive him someplace else to go to ball practice. Good thing we don't have any traffic, so that's not an issue. We're already putting mobile classrooms up. How many mobile classrooms can you put up until it's not a school anymore? I want you to look at this. Now, I'm going to go back. Hold on a minute. What is the current student population? Lake Norman High School is just shy of 1,900 students. Everybody keeps talking about, well, education was different in my old day. It was. How many kids went to your high school? I guarantee you 1,900 students weren't at your high school. I promise you that. Well, let's look at some local colleges. Davidson has 1,900 students. The Citadel has 3,500. VMI, 1,700. Wofford, 1,600. Erskine, 575. Washington and Lee, where our chairman went to school, 2,160. Lake Norman High School, 1,885. I have to ask you a question. When does it quit being a high school? How big do they have to be? You know, you can be in an elementary school and you don't rotate. Your teacher stays in the room. She notices when a student has disconnected and checked out. That happens. They'll know that at a middle school. In a high school, they rotate classes every period. A student can be so disconnected from everything and nobody will notice it. Do we really want we're not talking about high schools with 2,000 students. We're talking about, do we want to be a county with high schools that have 2,500 or more students? Can you imagine how hard it is to make the team? That's no longer part of your high school experience. Do you know your senior class? Heck no, these senior classes are going to be bigger than the high school you went to. Look at our map. Look at the map. These are where the high schools are. Mooresville, you're in there. We just covered it. The kids are coming. Now, people are going to tell you, oh, I've heard different figures about how many are coming. They don't know. You're right. Until they make a better crystal ball, we don't know. But we have ways of estimating. Okay? One way of estimating is we can look at how many houses we have based upon where they're built, how many children ended up going into school. And if you look, you'll see that right now, on the books, not projected, not anticipated, these are places we know that somebody has said, I'm building a house or I'm building an apartment where families are going to live. 990 students are coming now. If you use a different formula, I like this one actually the best because this is using data from the 2016 census as far as how many people are in a household, how many school-aged children are in the household, and then you use that, and proportionally you assume that the ages of the kids are equally represented across all age groups. We've got 1,359 students coming now. Not projected, not thinking, not maybe. At best, our best scenario, we've got almost 1,000. We probably have close to 1,400. That's how many today. Tomorrow, that number goes up. If we do this graph a month from now, this number goes up. This number does not go down. Now, if you notice, Statesville wasn't in there. We didn't get good numbers from them. Just telling you, I don't think that Statesville, based upon these clusters, that's what these purple things are. Those are the bigger developments that are coming in. Statesville's probably not going to change our numbers. So, to build or not to build, I'm going to call for the folks that are against the bond. I consider them to have the Kamala Harris option. What is the Kamala Harris option? Forced busing is a solution. She came out in the debate and she said she was for forced busing. So for those who believe in forced busing, you're supporting the Kamala Harris option, forced busing. And in this, we're going to put kids on the bus. We're going to fill those buses up with gasoline. Okay, did anybody hear what I just said? We're going to have to fill those buses up with gasoline. Do they give away gasoline to your school system?
Not today.
North to south, 52 miles. This is where there's some empty seats. This is where the kids are. To get the kids from here to up there, there are no wind-powered automobiles that are going to take them there. We're going to put them in school buses that burn gasoline. And we're going to bus them. So if you don't want to build the school where the kids are, you're in favor of busing. Let's be real clear with what people are advocating as an alternative to this bond. Lake Norman High School and Statesville High cannot be expanded. Because of the watershed, Lake Norman has only one direction it can go, and that is up. We can add a third, fourth, and fifth stories, but you want to get expensive? The school's already built. You don't add stories to buildings that are already built. Statesville Senior High, there's no expanding that. It's done. If we don't build a new high school, the way we're going to increase capacity to handle more students is we're going to add mobile units at South, at West, and at North. In case you didn't hear me, we're going to add them. To fix this, you will end up putting mega units up here. Let that sink in for a minute. How many people have heard we should run our government like a business? How many businesses would have their business here and put their assets up there? These school districts, these schools west and north, in order to more fully utilize their capacity, these lines are going to come down. Now, we don't know what they're going to look like, but I can promise you that students who now go to Statesville Senior High will end up going to North. Students that possibly are in West are going to go to North. Students that are currently going to South are going to go to West and Statesville. Where are these kids going to go? In Mount Morn. You go, well, they should go to Lake Norman High School. Remember, Lake Norman High School is already almost 400 students over capacity. Over capacity. Have you driven on Highway 150 during the morning or the afternoon? It's the black hole of Calcutta. You can put a school bus on that highway, you may never see it again. South Iredell is already over capacity. Think about this. The quickest way to get some of these kids to go to school is to pop their rear end in a school bus on the interstate, and they're going to go to senior high. Nobody's talking about this, but I am. We need to, everybody, we got to get real with what's about to happen. There's going to be people in Statesville that drive past Statesville Senior High on their way to go to high school at North. There's going to be students in Troutman that will drive past South Iredell High School to go to high school at West. That's what we're looking at. That's what we're looking at, but we don't need to pass the bond. We're going to have a lot of unhappy people. Let's not make the mistake that we did with I-77 toll lanes, where everybody gets pissed off after the contract is signed. The time for our people to get engaged is before we vote on the bond, not after the kids are on the school buses. Can we agree on that? That's the question. Now, the state of North Carolina, let's talk about busing. What it's going to really cost. The state of North Carolina has this thing called transportation efficiency, where they look at the number of schools, they divide it by the number of miles traveled, and that's the percentage that we get graded on. The lower your efficiency, the less money they give you for transportation. So if we increase the miles traveled in order to meet this busing option, we will actually get less money, not just for the kids that are getting bused. We will get less money to pay for gasoline for every single bus in the county. And who will make up that difference? The people that save money by not passing the bond. Iredell County, if we don't deal with this, Iredell County is going to have to come up with funds to pay for additional gasoline. This is not a figure that is in the tens of thousands of dollars. This is a figure that is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Either way, we're writing checks. There's not an option up here. There's not an option that's being proposed by anybody that doesn't have somebody writing a check. Now, this option is a good option, of course, if you own a gas company, if you sell tires to school buses, or if you sell school buses. Because guess what? We're going to need a lot of school buses. Now, the part that I'm not even going to talk about with a slide is we're going to need a lot of school bus drivers. Guess what we can't hire right now? School bus drivers. We don't even know if we can do it. It's going to cost some money. This is going to cost some money. People said, well, we can add mobile units. We don't have to build a high school. We can add mobile units. I'm going to tell you, my two children went to the Iredell Statesville school system. In 1 year, the first year that Lakeshore Middle was a school, my son attended Lakeshore when they were nothing but mobile units behind Brawley School. Now, I'm going to tell you as a parent, when your child goes to a school and it's a conglomeration of trailers, God bless the staff, but they don't feel like they go to a school. They know they don't belong on that campus. When their school bus pulls in, it's a different school on the sign. They don't feel like they belong. Don't kid yourselves. You live in a trailer? A lot of people do. But is that what we want? Is that really what we want? Okay, we can add mobile units. That is an option. That is an option. We have them now. We exercise that option now. If you look, let's just use the number 1,400 students. Remember, this is high school only. High school only. 1,400 students. We put 175 students per mega unit, which is the maximum. That's the maximum. We would need 8 mega units. These mega units cost just shy of $500,000 each. $500,000 each. It costs $95,000 to set them up. You go, well, gee, I could get Booger and Junior to set one up for less than that. No, you can't. They have to be handicap access. They have to have power run to them. They have to have water and sewer run to them. They have to have sidewalks put to them. It costs almost $100,000 to do that. So $560,000 to get a mega unit up. Or $3,200 a student. Here's the kicker. In 10 years, they're worthless. South Iredell High School, second most populated school in the county, 50 years old. That means that if mobile units is part of our plan, we're going to have to replace them 5 times in 50 years. We should run our government like a business. How many businesses do you know replace all of their buildings every 10 years? When people give you these lines, give it back to them. Both barrels. So we can add mobile units. And we can do it for about $4.5 million. And somebody could say, well, that is cheaper than $80 million for a high school. It is. I just want to ask you, you want to draw those lines? You want to put all those kids on I-77? Do you really want your child to go to a high school with 2,500, 3,000 students? More than just about money. But wait a minute. That's really not accurate, is it? That only covers the cost of what's in our system, in our computers, in our permitting office today. That's it. That covers what we're going to spend. That's what we're going to spend right now, today. Oh, I misspelled busing. I'm sorry. Oh, well. Do I?
It was important, so you just tossed in another.
You know what? If I thought that this was the number of students that were coming and that it would stop, I don't know that I would support this bond. I don't. I'm not saying that I wouldn't, but it'd be a harder decision, and I might not support it. But in order to not support it, I have to believe that I think the flow of students will stop. For someone to think that it's a bad idea to build this high school, they must first believe that they think that the flow of students, like we're seeing, is going to stop. Now who's being realistic and who's being unrealistic? The other belief you can have is that all of a sudden we think that all these subdivisions are going to get built in Union Grove and in Olin and in Harmony. If you think that's going to happen, maybe we don't need to build to do the bond right away. But in order to say that we shouldn't have the bond, you have to believe that this is a true statement. Who really believes that that's a true statement? There's a couple other things that I want to throw in there. I'm going to be a smidgen political. I hear a lot of presidential candidates talking about that they want to have a carbon tax. A carbon tax. Whenever you go and you fill up your car with gasoline and it has the octane rating on the gas pump, oct is 8. 8 carbons in that hydrocarbon molecule that burns in your gas tank. Guess what they're going to tax? So all of these figures that we had for what busing would cost, if that carbon tax comes into play, those numbers go out the window super high. And if you think that the state of North Carolina is going to make up that difference, you would be wrong. Another figure, just while I'm thinking about it, is I didn't mention very much about Mitchell College. You know why we're having this conversation now? We should have had this conversation probably a couple years ago if it weren't for Mitchell College. You go, what does Brewer have to do with this? He's got over 400 of our students at Mitchell College in his early college program. If it weren't for Mitchell College and the work that his staff is doing, we would need another half of a high school now. Right this minute. Right this minute. Wow, it's a good thing that we have some really, really smart people doing really, really good things in the county, because they've enabled us to push this decision back pretty far away. Or push it down the road a good bit. Now, we can do all those things that I just mentioned, or we can build a high school. To me, it became an easy decision. We're going to build a high school. We're going to build a high school. The only question is, how much money are we going to flush down the proverbial toilet on mobile units until we grow up and build the high school and not waste the money loading up 8 sets of mega units in these high schools and then try to bust the kids to get them there? Build or not to build? That really is the question. Now, I'm not going to wrap up yet, because we've only talked about the nouns and the cost and the challenge that the Board of Commissioners is going to have to put this on the ballot. And there's going to be people that don't want us to put it on the ballot. And for you, I hope many of you have come and you're prepared to work in favor of it. But I'm going to tell you, I'll put out a challenge to the parents in Iredell County. The first one is, I've talked about high school. And a lot of the reason people haven't supported the school systems is because they make arguments against public education. I want to just say a couple of things real quick. I hear so many teachers who have kindergarten and first grade students who show up and they don't know their ABCs, they don't know their colors, they don't know what sounds letters make. Parents, spend time with your school-age children. Before they show up at our school, make sure that they know their ABCs. Teach them their letters. Teach them some of the sounds that things make. Read them books. There's not a single school that won't help you find books. The libraries that help you find books. We spend a heck of a lot of money on books. Okay? You read to your children before they can read, I promise they'll be begging you to teach them to read. If we're going to spend $120 million on a bond, you can spend 120 minutes reading to your child. It's time for the parents to show up and spend some time. I don't understand why, when you go to a store and you want to buy a bag of cookies, you want the most cookies that you can get for a fixed set of money. We want the most value. We want the most stuff that our dollar will buy us. Why is it that we do that with everything except education? Why do we want to get by? Why do high school kids go to high school and don't take any of the advanced courses when they are offered to you? My son went to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. It's a hard school to get into. He went to the public school system. Everything that you need to go to a prestigious university is available in our public school system. You just have to reach for the gold ring. Vision controls behavior. And our parents need to put that vision into their kids to make them to aspire to want a life that involves education so that they want to go to school and that they want to learn. And I would just say this whole debate about education can't simply be about bricks and mortar and how much money that we're going to spend and what the tax rate's going to be and how much time somebody's going to spend on a school bus. I think this is a great time for our community to take a really hard look in the mirror and say, what is it that we're trying to do here? And I think everybody's got to step up to the plate. Commissioners, taxpayers, teachers, administrators, students, and parents. That's where we stand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Robertson. I noticed, although busing may have been misspelled for the busing, you have a reputation as a great hugger and a kisser, so busing probably is the first.
Right. Okay.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to run down the list of folks who have signed up to be heard. There's a 5-minute limit. I would suggest perhaps that if someone's gotten up and said everything you were going to say, that you can stand up and say, yeah, like them. But we want everyone to have that opportunity to share what's on your heart and the concerns you have so that we as commissioners and our educators and our boards of education can take those comments to heart and see how we can't square the circle and move forward together as a county towards the same commonly shared goal, which is to have the very best education system for our children so that our children can have jobs in this county to stay. If they leave for school, they can come back. If they go right out of school and they go in, they've got a job to go to that's going to provide them what we wanted for our children, which was a better lifestyle than the one we have. So we'll start off, Lynn Taylor. Okay. And when you come up, if you'll please just announce your name and your address so we can get that for the record. So you have a 5-minute clock. It's right over there.
All right. My name is Lynn Taylor, and I live in Mooresville, North Carolina. Okay. I'm coming tonight because I have a lot on my heart, not only about education, but about taxes. And the reason why is I am an education researcher, both at a local, state, and federal level. I am well known across the nation for being able to do research on legislation. I would be more than willing to sit down with anybody who wants a place at the education table because I have been able to find out that some of what we want to do locally has been driven by powers that are beyond local. That's a scary thought. Another thing is just because I may not be supportive of a bond does not mean that I'm in the wrong political party. It doesn't mean that I don't believe that schools should be built. It means I think we need to take a look at how we're spending our money that's already in the coffer. Okay, that said, government is not a business. It is supposed to be a representation of we the people. That's per the Constitution. If we're running government like a business, we're doing it wrong. Okay, I'm speaking out against this proposed bill for the proposed bond for education, and here's why. I don't want to see my property taxes raised yet again for school construction. Between federal, state, and local taxation, my property taxes are at an all-time high. Yet my household income is not risen to support all this. The trade-off, my family has to pay taxes, and we have to go without in other areas. Now I'm being told that, if I don't want to do this, then I'm not being a very good citizen. Well, I disagree. Okay, we've seen our taxes go up as part of the monthly toll quota for I-77, or so we've been told. We know that our property just got reassessed and our taxes went up again. So between that and then the Connect NC bond that was a few years ago, we have saddled future generations and ourselves with what was supposed to be for roads and infrastructure, but in turn was used for educational construction. That was $2 billion. Then Mitchell was included in the $350 million portion that went to all the community colleges here in North Carolina. The UNC school system, which includes on-learn and hybrid learning that's used here in Iredell County, got almost $1 million. Yet 3 years later, we're finding out, oh no, we need another $125 million. I would like to ask for an option that hasn't been brought up tonight, and that is an audit to see how the money's being spent to justify why so soon afterwards we need yet one more bond, which is deferred taxation that's going to be saddled on my children and my grandchildren. If we wish to teach a lesson to future generations, it should be to live within their means, not to borrow against a future that none of us are guaranteed. I have provided for your records my educational research into why I believe more money will not solve the problem of quality education in Iredell County or in North Carolina. The focus has been learn to earn and fast-tracking students into jobs. Their academics are suffering. And all the shiny new buildings in the county will not fix that. We've shifted from 3 R's to what career tracks our kids are going to be shoved into. This $125 million bond will not restore quality academic education. It will expand the overreaches of government and private groups who are grooming our students to be cogs in a wheel. I'm fed up with seeing my tax dollars used against wonderfully free-thinking people into what North Carolina likes to call the human capital talent pipe supply. We are talking about boys and girls, young men and young women, and this shift is going not only after high school, it's going after middle school, it's going after elementary school, and now pre-K, and I have proof that I will be happy to show anyone who wants to find out how. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Jennifer Christian.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Christian, and I live at 113 Freshwater Lane in Mooresville. And I'm here tonight wearing 2 hats. I'm here both as the chair of the Iredell County Education Facilities Task Force that you referenced earlier, that represents 19 members of the community from all corners of the county. And I'm here as an interested parent, as my husband and I have 2 children in the Iredell-Statesville school system. So first, I would like to say thank you to the county commissioners. Thank you for taking the extra step tonight with this public hearing so that the community is informed. And thank you also for allowing voters to have a say on what is important to them in this community. So thank you. And I would like to give a little bit of background on how we got here as far as the Facilities Task Force is concerned. It's been in existence for over 2 years, and the task force made recommendations to the county commissioners in February regarding educational facilities in all 3 of our educational entities, as mentioned earlier, Mooresville Graded, Iredell Statesville, and Mitchell Community College. The recommendations were the culmination of school and building site visits throughout the county, reviewing capacity data at schools, housing start data, population growth projections, reviewing existing and deferred maintenance, which is something that we didn't talk about tonight, which is very expensive and contributes to a child's educational experience, and addressing expansion needs and renovation needs as well. There was unanimous approval of the recommendations in the form of a 10-year plan that included 3 phases. Recently, the county found itself in a very fortunate position, as was mentioned earlier, with a bond reserve fund from the 2014 bond that will allow us to complete many of the Phase 1 critical projects. And I just want to make sure that we're aware of what those include. I know we talked a bit about southern end of the county. However, there are lots of projects that will be completed with those bond reserve funds that are located in other parts of our county. For example, with ISS, that means that West High School will receive new state-of-the-art vocational shops, as well as renovated and repurposed old shop areas. Also, Statesville High School will see new CTE shops to support the Career Tech program, as well as physical education upgrades. Also, Lakeshore Elementary School, you referenced them earlier, will see the addition of 4 to 6 classrooms. Additionally, for the Mooresville Graded School District, this means that with the combination of bond reserve funds and, as Dr. Mooney mentioned earlier, some private funding or a loan, that they will be able to take care of renovating and upgrading South Elementary and Parkview Elementary schools, including adding a gymatorium at each school, upgrading the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. It isn't all shiny and new. It's just to have it function efficiently and have water, have heat, have air conditioning, as well as increasing parking at South Elementary and expanding the cafeteria at Parkview Elementary. For Mitchell Community College, they will be able to make steps to acquire needed land or renovate the Greer Science Building. And as we heard from Dr. Brewer, many of those buildings are very, very old. All of these items were identified as critical Phase 1 needs. And I know that we're talking about those needs that aren't funded by any bond reserve funds, but I wanted to make the community aware that there are a lot of additional projects that were critical needs. Not nice to have, need to have. There are 3 phases that are not covered by the bond reserve funds, and both Commissioner Robertson and Chairman Mallory have alluded to a lot of these. So I think just to keep that moving along from a capacity standpoint, clearly there is very strong data to support funding the remaining Phase 1 critical education facility needs that were identified in the 10-year plan. As mentioned for Mitchell Community College, a joint partnership and cooperation with multiple entities throughout the county. So we're not talking about just the children that are enrolled in our schools in the county. We're talking about all of the citizens that receive needed services, law enforcement, EMS, firefighting, and that impacts people of all ages in our community. So we're not just talking about, when we mentioned Mitchell, a driving pad, but there's classroom space, storage space to support law enforcement training center, firefighting education, and EMS training. And those were identified as key projects as well. So in closing, I just want to say that I believe that people want to be proud of their community. Everybody in here, we have that in common. All of us in here want to be proud of our community, and most of us live or work here in Iredell County, or both. And they want to live in a place where people say hello to each other, they know their neighbors, and they help each other out. And I think part of the fabric of a strong community is how we treat our elderly and how we treat our children. And I hope that when we look back on the decisions that we make tonight, that we can all be proud of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Christian. Todd Russo. And if you are here and have small children or need to be hitting the road a little early after Mr. Russo speaks, if you would identify yourselves, we'll pull you in next so that you can get kids back to bed.
Good evening. My name is Todd Russo. I live on Old Mountain Road here in West Iredell. But I wanted to build off of what was just presented as well. I have the honor of serving as the principal at Harmony Elementary School. And I started my career here in Iredell Statesville Schools as a teacher at Lake Norman Elementary. Became the assistant principal there, went to Cottle Creek, then I went to Lakeshore Middle and Lakeshore Elementary School. So I certainly know a lot about the growth because my principal and I, when I was at Lakeshore Elementary, started talking about what are we going to do with all these kids that are about to flood into our school. But I have the privilege of not only being a principal in Iredell Statesville Schools, but I live in West Iredell. And I'm certainly an advocate of public education. And as we have seen, the southern end is just growing leaps and bounds. But I also think that we need to inform our community and our members of Iredell State or Iredell County to let them know what that ripple effect is. So just to kind of build on what was just talked about, if the bond went to a vote, I want to make sure that they understand that funding would be freed up for projects for several other schools. And I have to advocate for my school, all right? And what I think about that is we know that the growth takes the priority. So if there's not a bond and it does not pass, my school keeps getting pushed back. And to talk about my school a little bit, we have a 4th and 5th grade wing that is a little bit older. And that 4th and 5th grade wing has classrooms that are about 150 square feet smaller than our current K-3 classrooms. But we still have 28 5th graders sitting in those classrooms. We also have fixed furniture that we cannot move. So space is limited. Our bathrooms are 60 square feet. A typical bathroom in a school is approximately 220 square feet. So when you consider students from Harmony, and we're a farm community, we grow them big, all right? And for them, for them to squeeze into those little bathrooms is tough. And when we have over 80 fifth graders, that's hard to get kids in and out, all right? We also have to go through classrooms in our 4th and 5th grade wing to get to other classrooms, or else we have to walk around the outside of the building. So when I think about advocating for my school, I think it's important for our community members to understand, yes, this bond is for Southern growth, and that's needed because that benefits all of Iredell County. But we also need to educate people on what that looks like for the rest of the county, and that this is not just a vote for a high school in Iredell Statesville Schools. It's for more than that. And so those unused funds would allow us to address other needs. And as I told you, I am a West Iredell resident and attend church in our area, and I talk to a lot of our community members. Celeste is in great need of some site improvements. West Iredell Middle and West Iredell High, we have the privilege of being a part of youth athletics, and so we go to other facilities to practice and to play games. Those sites, you can see, are in need of site improvements. So as a resident and advocating for our schools, our community wants to rally behind us, and they want better for our kids. And it's not just a building, but it's what our kids deserve. So I just want to thank you all for your time, and thank our community for your support. I just feel like these things need to be addressed, and we know we have priorities, and we need to stick to those priorities, but we also need to educate people on what the back end of that creates. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who'd like to jump into line with kids? If you'll come forward, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Aruna Sammy Nathan, and I'm a junior at Lake Norman High School. So as said earlier, as new job opportunities open, more kids are going to be coming in, and this means that we're going to need a larger high school. So when it was said that Lake Norman High School is at maximum capacity, this isn't a lie, and I can say that. An example is in our AP psychology classrooms, there are 3 blocks, and in each block there's 50 kids. Imagine what type of learning you could do with 50 kids in a classroom. Can your teacher really pay attention to each individual student's needs? Not really. AP Calculus, 35 kids in each classroom. There's 3 classes. You can't really do much. We have to ask ourselves, how large can these classes get until your child's learning is affected? Teacher-student relationships are important, and with classrooms as low as 40 kids and as high as 50 kids, what exactly can we do? So I do believe that in 5 to 10 years, we definitely need a new high school, and I support this bond. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? I'll go back to the order. Okay.
She doesn't have to go to bed. Taking all those AP classes, she's got to do some homework.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, Bill Balato.
I'm Bill Balato. I live at 455 Sullivan Road in Statesville. I'm a proud parent of a graduate of Statesville High and a graduate of South Iredell High School. My oldest got a great education at Statesville High and has moved on to a professional degree. And my son is now working on Dr. Brewer's campus on a 2-year degree. So I really appreciate everything Iredell Statesville schools have done for my children. I'm also a realtor in this county. And I can tell you that over 19 years of doing this, I very rarely have had any individual, family, or business who didn't ask me about the schools where they were planning to locate their home or their business. And I've been very proud to show them Iredell Statesville and Mooresville graded schools and the Mitchell Community College campuses. But I can remember the day a few years ago before Statesville High was renovated that I sometimes didn't drive down Center Street to show them that campus. And right now, when you look at South Iredell and you look at Lake Norman High, when the parents ask me to go see them, they're wondering about all the mega units and everything else. And so are businesses who are thinking about locating here. We got a fact of life in this county. We're growing from the bottom up. Our economic development is from the bottom up. But we're all going to be better off economically if we grow that up further. We will eventually one day see more growth in Statesville and north of Statesville. We have $21 billion worth of tax base in this county, and over $15 million of it is located below Exit 45. Chairman Mallory shared that figure with me a few days ago. So we're putting this where the need is. We're also putting it where the people will pay for it. They are paying for it. We also need our growth to keep our taxes as low as possible to be commercial growth, not just residential. A quarter to a third of our growth needs to be commercial to keep our tax rates on our homes from going sky high. Businesses will locate here when they see financial support by the county and the community for the schools. Period, end of subject. Lowe's Corporation moved from North Wilkesboro to Mooresville because Wilkes County turned down a school bond, and we supported it. I trust the residents of Iredell County to vote for this school bond just like they have for the last two, because they recognize the needs for all their children. I live in Statesville. My schools aren't going to be affected around me, but I know the whole county will be better off, and economically we'll all be better off. When I started the business 19 years ago, they told me that a $250,000 house was break even for paying for its services that the county provides. I'm now told that's about $400,000.
$473.
$473. Thank you, Ken. By the way, what you said earlier, preach. I can count on both hands the number of $400,000 houses that are going to be built this year in Iredell County north of Exit 45. I can't count on both hands and feet how many are going to be built in South Iredell in the next month. We are supporting that. We need to support that. Those of us that live in Statesville and North need to support that for our long-term economic growth. Commissioner Mallory also shared for me the task forces that he and his fellow commissioners participate in. Economic development. We live in a knowledge-based economy world today. The education of our children at our schools and Mitchell College is what's going to drive our economic development. Make your job easier. Public safety and justice. The better educated kids who are in less crowded classrooms or are getting more attention do better? Absolutely. Better for public safety and justice. Public health and well-being, same thing. And general government would be a lot easier. So I'm asking you, commissioners, to put it on the ballot, let the citizens of Iredell decide, and I'm asking the citizens of Iredell County to vote overwhelmingly for your children, for your economic future, for their economic future. You want them to come home to Iredell County after they graduate from high school and do great things in this county? And give them a reason to come back. Vote for this bond. Thank you.
Is Shannon Vieira?
Good evening. It's not even afternoon. I have to follow Ken and Bill, so that's really hard. But good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight concerning the education bond for 2020. For those that haven't met me, I'm Shannon Vieira, the new president and CEO of the Greater Statesville Chamber of Commerce. So relatively new to the area, almost a year, so I have a pretty fresh perspective of what's happening, especially on the education front. Not only am I new to the area, I also have twins who are attending East Iredell Elementary School, so we are very strong supporters of the public education system, and they're thriving very well, so we appreciate that, all the efforts that have been made to get them acclimated. So I have a very vested interest in the success of the schools. We see our family being here for a long time, and we are going to be very proactive in keeping the success of our elementary school and all the others going forward and being proactive, and appreciate the efforts that you are making today to do that, because we do have to be planning ahead. We cannot wait for things to happen. We need to be actively thinking through. And as the chamber president, honestly, education is number one thing we talk about. We have a very strong education and workforce development committee. Bill, who just spoke, he's been on that board, I think, 15 years or so that board's been going strong, and we have saw all the changes and that have gone through the education system here in Iredell County. I had to scribble my notes because I heard so many good things that I needed to include in my notes here, so let me look real quick. The Chamber did support the last two education bonds, and I believe that we'll get the support of our board for this one as well. We just kind of heard about it. Our board meeting was a couple weeks ago. Beth actually brought it up, told us to be on the lookout for this bond, and immediately we started talking within our executive committee, our education committee, on what we were going to do. So we have not had a meeting since this all came out, but I do believe that we'll have support from our board, and the information that was heard today will be very helpful in getting the information to them so they can make a good decision. I also just want to tell Beth thank you for bringing it up, because that's the reason we have you on our board, to keep us on track of what's going on at the county. There's no way one person can get to everything, so I really appreciate that and hope you'll continue to do that and keep us posted.
She adds value.
Yes, she does. Every time Beth we only meet every other month, so there's a little gap in between, but there's always good information that she brings to our board that we are very, very thankful to have. The other area that the Chamber really works hard on is, it's the Greater Statesville Chamber, and the Greater is real important because it means we're beyond our Statesville area. And we have a Troutman Business Council, which is really going to be affected by this bond because of the South Iredell High School. So we had a meeting today, and we talked a little bit about that. But in order to grow our area, the schools are number one. Oh, my gosh, I'm running out of time. Okay. So Troutman has 2,000 housing permits that they have approved in Troutman. Where are they going to go? Where are the kids going to go? Troutman is, further, it's on the way up. Bill mentioned Statesville's on its way. We're right behind there. But where are these 2,000 families going to live? Because they are attracting the families to that community. So we really need to support this. We know that great schools increase our property values, decreases crime, and encourages our families and residents to stay and be engaged. That is what education does. I don't care where you are and what community, education does that. And families are very attached to their schools. The gentleman that spoke about Harmony and the folks that how it's a sense of pride when you pull into that school and you have a football game. Maybe it was Ken that said it. Football game, baseball game. You want pride in your community. You don't want to see those mobile units out there. You want to have pride, and families are attached to their schools. And again, great schools encourage business development in commercial and retail. Not to mention the large industry that our Iredell County Economic Development Corporation brings in. That's the number one thing that they look at, is that if they're bringing in a big company, the families want to know, tell me about the community, tell me about the schools. I know I did when I moved here. I'm just going to say that we appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight, and we're here to support you. Keep us informed. Let us know how we can help get the message out. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey Smith.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Smith. I am the CEO of Piedmont Healthcare. I'm the past chair of the Greater Statesville Chamber of Commerce, and I live at 618 St. Andrews Road in Statesville. I'm a product of public education. My children are a product of public education. Not in the North Carolina area. We were in the Philadelphia market. In the Philadelphia market, where we paid 3 to 4 times the amount of tax that you pay here. I won't say the education was better, but I think what it showed was a commitment to the schools, God bless you, a commitment to the schools to pay whatever was necessary to provide the education that was needed. Now, I did not grow up in a great town. I grew up in a blue-collar steel town, and the steel left. We didn't have a lot of money. I grew up in a house that was about 1,000 square feet. So public education works, and what the people here are doing is working. The problem is we don't have enough space. As the CEO of Piedmont Healthcare, I get asked all the time by physicians that we try to recruit to this area, how are the schools? It's the second question they ask. The first question is, how much money can I make? But the second question is, how are the schools? Because they have families. And the answer that we have to give is, they're good schools, but they're crowded. And we can no longer give that answer. We lose talent in this area. Our job is to continue to grow this area, to make it prosperous. This is an amazing part of the country, and I think that we've got the infrastructure to do just that. The people here, Mooresville graded, Iredell, Statesville, certainly at Mitchell, everybody's doing great things with small amounts of money. They need this money. My challenge to you, quite frankly, is, are we doing enough? Let's make sure that this bond, if we're going to issue a bond, because we just issued one a couple of years ago, let's make sure it's big enough. Let's make sure that the projects that are needed to be done get finished. I'll just close with a couple things. An economist, Eric Hanashek, out of Stanford, so he has some credentials, he said, local economies flourish with more skilled and productive workers that are educated. We know that's the case. We need to educate our folks. Another fellow, Lance Lochner, did a study, said improvements in education equal lower crime, improved health, and increased participation in the community. That's what we want. That's what we need. I implore you, pass this bond, put it on the, let us vote if we have to vote. If we don't approve it, just do it anyway. Just saying.
We'd rather you vote for it.
But you certainly have the support of Piedmont Healthcare, and whatever we can do to move this forward, we will help you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rob Woodruff.
Hi, Rob Woodruff, 270 Corona Circle, Mooresville. Thank you very much. Proud parent of a 7th grader and a 5th grader in Iredell Statesville schools. I'll make this brief because I didn't know what I was going to see here from the community. Right now it sounds like there's a lot of support. I do support this. A lot of things have been said that I was going to kind of hit on. One of the things I wanted to add to is the fact, Commissioner Robertson, you brought up the fact that what happens if we don't pass the bond now, okay? And we talked about the mobiles. We know these inefficient, uninspiring boxes of blah in which we try to educate our children. Thank God we have teachers that can do it and still motivate. We have that issue. If we don't pass the money, we're not going to get much help from the state either right now. There are things in place. We know what's going on in Raleigh with the veto of the current budget that was passed. There are measures in place, but Iredell County is in an interesting place because they're not necessarily have the tax base and the population that a Mecklenburg County or a Wake County, who passed $1.35 billion and $1.2 billion in bonds over the past 5-6 years, respectively, have done. But we do have the challenges of growth, and we need this bond to pass to keep up with it. As Principal Russo had mentioned, the availability of other funds from the capital and infrastructure funding from the state that could go to other needs within the county would be very much needed. There's needs everywhere. We've got projects that have been around from 50s and 60s. These buildings are built to last, but not that long. So please put it on, pass the bond. Thank you very much.
Ayana Robinson.
Good evening. My name is Ayana Robinson. I live at 13204 Delaney Drive, and I have the privilege to serve as the principal of Morrisville Middle School. I am standing here this evening to represent our parents and staff, but most importantly, our students. It is with great confidence that I can tell you, and every student at Morrisville Middle School would agree, we are in dire need of a new middle school in Morrisville. Our current middle school that serves only 7th and 8th grade students has about 1,040 total students enrolled. Yesterday, we enrolled 9 new students. Every room in our building is being used to serve students. We currently do not have a space in the building to use as a flex space. Every day that we are in our building, we feel what it means to be at capacity. Actually, beyond capacity. As I drive into work every morning, I am watching the new homes that are being built all around Morrisville. I am excited for these families as they are moving into beautiful new homes or apartments and an awesome community. I am also noticing the new bus stops that are being added around Morrisville, and that the number of middle school students waiting at these new bus stops are increasing daily. I would like to take a minute to brag on our staff and students. We all agree. We have been in need of a new middle school building for a few years. Our teachers are super creative with how they utilize our current space. It is not uncommon to come to Morrisville Middle School and to see co-teachers who are utilizing the hallway to conduct small group instruction. About 3 years ago, we worked with our maintenance department to increase the size of the dining area of our cafeteria. There's something very unique about dining with 520 7th or 8th grade students at a time. While it is well known that overcrowding with this age group is not in the best educational interest of the students, they handle the situation as well as possible because they are all great kids. I am standing here today to ask you, on behalf of our middle school students, please consider placing the bond referendum on the March 2020 ballot. Our middle school students deserve a school that is not as overcrowded, one where they can walk through the halls and not bump into each other trying to get to class, one where they have the ability to have flex groups and small group instruction in the comfort of a classroom. They deserve a school that is not described as overcrowded, but instead one that is able to maximize student learning and success in an environment that is both safe and conducive to learning. Thank you so much for your time.
Chairman Mallory, just for the record, that middle school was originally on the previous bond, but when we were trying to get the bond, the total figure down, where's the chairman of Piedmont Health? This has to be a pill that's small enough to swallow. The Mooresville Graded School District removed this middle school off of the previous bond to help the chances of that previous bond passing, and it did. The one thing that we promised was that project would absolutely be on the next bond. They did their part. They've done their part. I did not mention your school, didn't talk about Mitchell College, and I didn't talk about where's the principal from West. There's a lot of things I didn't talk about to just focus on one issue. But there's a lot of people who are going to be impacted by this. And if you don't think you're going to be impacted by the overcrowding down south, when we redraw the lines, believe me, West and North and Statesville Senior High will be busting at the seams. Everybody's going to feel the pain when these lines get redrawn, if the bond doesn't pass.
And both systems, to be fair, did reduce projects off the last bond to make it more palatable, to be fair. Both of them cooperated with the commissioners. I was on the board in 2014. Both of them did that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Craig Mouse.
Good evening, gentlemen. Craig Moss, 130 Harris Farm Road in Mooresville. I've heard a lot of professional people speak tonight, making valid points regarding children. Who wouldn't be concerned about children and their welfare and their education? However, I think it is somewhat unfair to potentially position someone who may have reservations about this bond as being anti-children, not wanting to understand or appreciate the needs. I've heard tonight already, we're talking about a great deal of money, already about addendum collaterals being introduced within this here bill, not really directly related to education. That to me, as a taxpayer, is alarming because I've seen this before. I've seen how things morph. It starts off with a well-intended design, with children being used, and next thing you know, money gets funneled here, money gets funneled there, points of which Ms. Taylor made earlier on. Now, there is growth going on in this county. There's no doubt about it. I've lived here for almost 20 years. Since then, I'm retired. My taxes have doubled. Certainly, I'm concerned about taxes. I'm concerned about the welfare of the children. I think a question in terms of marriage and how do you integrate these needs, because we're dealing about not only children, but if the demographics are not there to afford the cost, and I'm talking about all citizens, particularly in my case, retired. How do you afford these things? Or are you going to wind up with a situation every bit the same as, why are these people coming here? Well, they're coming from a failed situation and condition, largely up north, where taxes were appropriated for all of the best reasons and then misused and abused. Now they can't afford to live there. Long Island, New York, the average cost up there, and they always used education, is $14,000 a year. That's a fact. That's a fact. Okay? How do you substantiate that when the median income in this country today is only $62,000? Now, these are the things I'm concerned about. We saw a graph and all of the other stuff. A lot of it, nonetheless, is based on conjecture, conjecture. How do you remedy this with respect to the bottom line? We talk about businesses, this, that, and the other thing. Well, newsflash, businesses are coming here for the same reason those people are getting out, because of a more fair tax base and an environment in which they can live. Of course, the schools are important there, no doubt about it. I'm not saying one should be prioritized over the other. What I'm simply saying is, how do you marry all of the interests, the demographics as it relates to your citizenry, okay, and the needs of a public school system? How is that going to be broken down? So my reservation is with regard to monies being appropriated for what is conceivably being referred to as an erstwhile situation. But again, I have two daughters in the education system, both of whom have master's degrees. They came through the public school system just like I did. One is a couple of credits shy of a doctorate, okay? They've seen the failure of the New York City school system for all of the reasons being discussed here. When in its infancy years ago, the same things were being discussed, and the politicians destroyed it. Who lost? The kids lost. The schools are falling apart. The people are moving out, and they're going elsewhere, simply out of affordability. Now, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Certainly education is important. But to what degree is that going to be managed properly? Are the monies going to be used exclusively for these things? But like, as I said, I've heard addendums here this evening about we need some for some roads or maybe larger bathrooms. See, this is how it begins to snowball elsewhere. You know, and where is the control? Where is the final element that we could relate to and understand? particularly with regard to the demographics. Are we going to be eliminated in this here, in this proposal? So, thank you.
I'd like to comment just briefly, and normally I don't speak, but I appreciate your comment. But I want to tell you the difference between what we're trying to do. A voter-approved referendum is for specific projects. They're statutorily restricted. The funding that's for projects that have been identified by citizens of the community, not just by school districts. There's annual audits that verify where that money's spent, every dime. That's why we in this county don't have misuse and abuse, because we trust our voters and we tell our voters the facts about what we need, why we need it, and how we're going to use their money. So I didn't want you to leave the podium thinking that it's like some other bureaucratic cow that's going to be trickled here and trickled there. These capital funding approved by our voters are for specific projects and limited to those projects. So I wanted you to understand that. And thank you for your comment.
I think considering that we have the lowest tax rate in the region, and not just by a little bit, but by far, says that we're tight. We're tight with a dollar. When we were dealing with a lot more school construction back in 2005, 4, 5, and all that kind of stuff, I told them I'll make a deal. I won't appropriate any more money to school construction if we stop issuing building permits. They're related. And there are some people that say, I don't want our county to grow, and I understand that. But if we allow people to move here, we are obligated to provide a building. We have nothing to do with what any teacher says in that building. But we're obligated for there to be space in that building for students. So as far as I'm concerned, if we don't want to build the buildings for more kids coming in, we got to stop issuing building permits, which incidentally, we can't win that case in court. I've already been down that road. I supported a moratorium at one time in order to deal with this situation of overcrowding of schools. And we cannot win that case in court.
And we respect your position. I just didn't want you to leave the podium thinking that was a potential possibility, because that is why we like voter referendums.
I respect that, but the second part of that is, how are you going to address the demographics with respect to your citizens, and in the cases of affordability? With all due respect to Mr. Robinson, yeah, our area may be the lowest, but nonetheless, Mooresville, we get hit twice down there. We got the city tax, we got the county tax. Okay, we're paying through the nose. My taxes have doubled since I've been here. December will be 20 years. Okay, now I'm not adverse to needs. It comes down to reality, and you could conceivably be driving your base out of here. It can have a boomerang effect. I've seen it before. You could see it in the major cities elsewhere. This is a real concern. All I'm asking is that you take this into consideration, and how you're going to deal with the demographics as it relates to the citizens.
And we do. Okay. And that's why we strive with our economic development people and our educational entities to have balanced growth. Okay. Our industrial commercial growth and job workforce development is what keeps the property taxes for residential down. And so you want to move from up north down here to live, and we want our quality of life, education, recreation, all those things to be the reason you stay here, and we want our kids to come back. So we do value and respect your opinion, but we want you to understand we take all of those things into factor. Okay. But we trust you, and we want you to know the facts about, I didn't want you to leave the podium thinking we would allow, or these ladies and gentlemen that are elected also would misspend your money. I know it happens in politics, but that's why a voter-approved referendum is our choice of this board, and has been, because it's approved by the people that pay it. We're entrusted to account for it, and it is audited annually. So I just wanted you to know that. Okay. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you very much. Navitha Mamaluri. Maybe I didn't say that correctly. South Iredell High School student? Or she's already spoke? Okay. All right. Robert Murphy.
Hi, good evening. I'm Rob Murphy. I live on Preserve Way in Mooresville, North Carolina. Love it. Been down here about 3 years. This year we reassessed the taxes. My taxes went up approximately 10%, and my elementary school's end-of-year grades went down approximately 20%. It's terrible. I thought I have a lot of problems. The superintendent, I'm sure, is happy to tell you with what's going on at our school. Toxic environments. I've complained to the school board, as have many other people. The grades are now showing it. The exodus of teachers has been horrible. We speak, and I hope you folks will listen tonight, because we haven't been heard. And that's the problem. We're not being heard as parents and as citizens. So, just to drop back, also, you should reconsider the bond is not the only issue there is. What if you put a $10,000 fee on every new housing unit being built on their permit? With the 10,000 units being built, you would have $100 million.
And you would lose in court. That's already been established.
Why would well, whatever. Think out of the box. This shouldn't be the only issue that you have is to float something. So my argument, though, is that the elementary schools are failing. It's a big problem. I have a son still in the elementary schools. My daughter's in the middle school. I'm a big believer in public education. I went to public schools up and through high school. When I finished high school and went to college, I went to a private Catholic college because I'm a man of faith. I don't have faith in the administration of these schools. I have questionable on the board. The woman who spoke up earlier said, what about an audit? She could find money in the audits. We should be auditing these schools. There should be transparency in the schools. Our voices should not be ignored. I don't appreciate the head roll. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. We should be heard.
That they are audited every year.
Well, this woman claims that they can find money through audit. I don't have faith in what's going on. I don't feel there's transparency. I think when you put a $120 million bond out, and I could be wrong, but at the meeting, I recall hearing at one of the meetings that the engineering and the architectures are no-bid contracts. So $10 million is going to go directly into the pockets of people without public input and without a bid process, if that's the case. I hope it's not, but if it is, I have an issue with that. I think that this money should be looked at. And if there is a failing in the elementary schools, as I feel there are, I think you're mistaken on what's going on with the growth. That people will continue to come down here from New York, as I did, but they'll come down to retire, not to raise families. I came to raise a family, and I recommend it to anybody, because this is a fantastic place to live. And really, for the most part, I'm very happy, but these are where I have the issues. So if the families don't come down, the problem now is you're going to build high schools built on today's issue with the numbers of students, which, by the way, I graduated with a class of 485 students. So big schools aren't so bad. But they do need good education. It's not the size that matters, that's as Irish people say. But so if you're not getting the right people in, and people aren't raising families here, you're going to have a glut. And what's going to happen is you're building high schools built on the needs of today, and then in 5 years when the elementary school when the elementaries come and people are going to charter schools and the companies aren't coming here because they can't attract people to come down because they don't have the schools to support it, there's going to be a lull. And you'll have spent a lot of money on empty buildings with bad contracts and money that just nobody seems to know where it went. That's what we call the Hillary Clinton effect. So I am not happy that you have to float a bond without the proper recognition from the people who will be here. Our taxes are going up. Again, I understand taxes go up. They do, and we're accommodating. It's growing like madhouse. There's infrastructure needs, there's school needs, there's a lot going on. But this is a big nut. You're putting a lot on us, and I don't think it's being thought out. The school administration has to be examined. I don't have faith in the administration. I can't have faith in this bond. And I have to say I would not vote for it. I would not support it. I would not recommend anyone support it until we can have transparency in the school administration. I thank you for your time, and I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Sir, I just want to say, too, I want to comment on that. I appreciate it, and I respect your opinion again. But as an elected official, we take pride, and the school systems boards take pride. There is annual audits. There is oversight and accountability. We are the checks and balances that the voters in this county, 180,000 people, vote to put us there. I'm sorry you disagree with that, which I respect your opinion. But I'm telling you that administrations are audited by outside firms, and the school boards oversee that, are elected by you. Please run for office if you're interested. We want good people that are concerned for the right reasons. But I just don't want you to leave the podium again thinking that there are people elected in this county, we take pride in that, in dishonesty, because that's why we want voter-approved referendums and expenditures. Our job is to tell you the facts. You can meet any of their finance people any day you want to. I'll set that up, or our people. The money's going where we tell you it's going. It's not being put in somebody's pocket. And the contractors and the bids, the gentlemen that run the school district contracting, they're not going to go to jail for any contractor, I can assure you. So I just want to let you, I understand that. I respect for you. I want you to understand, if you have concerns, I want to turn your no to a yes by the time it's time to vote, because I want to get you in front of the people and let you see the I's are dotted, checks are crossed. And that's what I'm offering, is I want to convince you I can get you the facts and figures you asked for.
I appreciate that. And I have faith in this board and the board. I think the board members who are here will tell you I'm a respectful person. I speak at some of the meetings. I listen at most of the meetings.
Please take the time to just go look at the facts. That's all I ask. I'll go with you.
I don't know. Again, I'm from New York. I don't always agree with the numbers. I don't always agree with the charts. It doesn't make them real. But I'm not crying fraud. I'm just telling you there's doubt.
Okay. I respect that.
And I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't doubt the honesty of this board or the other board. But I do have problems with the administration of the Iredell school system. I don't feel that the parents are being heard. And I think we're being ignored for personal reasons. They're not putting the students first. And the fact that my elementary school, Woodland Heights, went from an A+ school to barely a B school in 2 years is horrible. And what's the other one? Right next to it, or right down the street? No, Brawley's the middle. Excuse me. The Lake Norman Elementary, excuse me. They don't appear to be too much better. And without those strong schools, I came here for the schools. That's why we come down here. The other gentleman had it right. It's so expensive up north, and believe me, I had this argument with Phil Murphy, and he was looking at me like you guys. We come down to escape the taxes, but we also have high demands, and I understand it's a delicate balance, but please consider it.
Thank you. Okay, Laura Lalonde. No, okay, we got a North Iredell Middle School. Okay. Maxine Connell? No, it's Maxine Hargis. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Didn't think you got called on. All right. All right. All right. This looks like Billy Manners. Pardon? Okay. And we got Rob Woodruff.
Rob spoke.
Okay, he was there. Okay. Chris Shoebridge.
I just want to talk just for a moment. I'm Chris Shoebridge, 546 Elmwood Road. I'm a realtor. I'm a parent of children that came through the school system. I'm a taxpayer, and I'm also a member of the School Facilities Task Force. There are a lot of other things that have been addressed. One, I think, is that I definitely see the correlation between schools and quality development and quality coming into the county. And I've seen so much improvement over the years. And it's kind of a bad feeling for me when I have someone come to town and they ask to look at a particular house, and we set up to. It's on Tuesday. We're going to look at it on Thursday morning, and I get a call Wednesday afternoon, and they've looked at the schools, and they said, "Well, we think we're going to move on somewhere else." That's a bad feeling for me. I've lost out as a realtor. We've lost out as a community. We've lost out as a county. So there's definitely a correlation between quality development and quality schools. The other thing I want to comment on a moment is the process. And I think this is my third stint, I think, on the Facilities Committee. And people might think that these are projects that are pulled from the air. They're not. I think my first stint on the Facilities Committee was probably about 2005. And I remember back then that, we had front burner projects coming up. 2005, 2009, I think it was, things like Statesville High School rebuilding, Cool Spring Elementary rebuilding, North having major improvements made up there. I can remember this Shepherd Area High School being out there and discussed since at least 2005. And, the Facilities Task Force goes through and sets the priorities. Each time we go through, we probably look at every school. Most of the individual buildings are mentioned, conditions are mentioned, improvements are mentioned, overcrowding is mentioned, and then we get stacks of reports as to population that's coming. So it's a long-term process in setting these priorities, and I think at this point that the priorities of these particular big projects, I think this has bubbled up, and I feel sure personally that I'm going to support the idea of the new high school, because I'm convinced that it's needed from a parent standpoint, from a realtor standpoint, from a Facilities Task Force standpoint, and from a taxpayer standpoint. Thank you.
Ernest Spivak.
Good evening. Just wanted to thank you all for having the fiscal responsibility that you do, and for having a proactive approach on this issue. Some of us may agree, disagree on certain things. Personally, I don't think education of our kids is a business. I think it's a responsibility. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't sign up to have kids to make money. They are not a financial windfall exactly. They come with a lot of expensive stuff. So I will say I moved to the area around 2000, and I've seen it balloon, right? We're essentially a victim of our own success, so we have to deal with what comes with that. I live in the Mooresville area around exit 33, right behind actually a Langtree charter. So that thing got built, and gosh, our son was just about ready to go to elementary school, and I thought, man, he could ride his bike. This is going to be great. So we sent him there for kindergarten. It was the second or third year it was open. And kindergarten was pretty good. We got a good teacher. Lucked out. First grade, you got a room with overcrowded, bad teacher, no windows. The place was a dumpster fire. Okay, so what do? Let's go to the local school, which is Cottle Creek. Our principal is here today, and we couldn't be happier. She's amazing. The staff is amazing. The place is great. So, thank you. Our son did not want to go to Langtree Charter. We had to kick him, drag him, kick him, and screaming out the door. Now he jumps up out of bed and ready to go. He's happy to go to school and see the principal right at the bus line and the carpool line. So I grew up north in areas that were clear that where there was good education, there were higher property values. It's a reinforcing cycle. So that's why I'm here to support this bond. The gentleman that was talking about taxes doubling in 20 years, that's 3% inflation. That's the math, right? Things go up in price every year. So taxes go up 3% over 20 years. That's not bad when your property value is probably more than doubled. So anyway, going back, if you do want to look at education as a business, if you put that map back up and you're in a charter school business, where would you put that school, right? And that right there will take away money from all of the other schools. The other point that I'd like to make about the good schools driving higher property values is that we will have more tax revenue from those property values. That will not just reinforce the better schools, but also provide opportunity for more and better government services. So, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. The last person that we have signed up to speak is Martin Page.
Who is that?
Somebody had to be last, right? Martin Page, 570 Front Hill Road in Mooresville. But I just very short, very brief. Thank you for looking forward. The day we opened Lake Norman High School, it was overcrowded. The second year we put mobile units in. And thank you guys for seeing the need and seeing the future. And Mooresville's the same way. They know we got to put these kids somewhere. There's no option. We have to put these kids somewhere. Thank you for being willing to put this to the voters, because I agree. I think the voters need to make this decision. Thank you very much, and we appreciate what you've done for the school systems in Iredell County. Thank you.
Thank you. I would ask if any of the commissioners would have any remarks.
I just have a brief one. I know a lot of people are going to have opinions. I would just say that folks who do not support the bond or don't want to pay taxes, I hear you, I understand, but when you tell that to me, I want you to include one piece of information that continues to be missing. Where am I going to put all of these kids? Okay? So don't tell me that you just don't want to pay taxes, because I understand. I don't want to pay them either. I'm looking for people that can bring alternatives to the table about where am I going to put all of these kids. And then the last thing I'd like to say is sometimes it's tough being a public servant. I just got word that I've been asked to stay after this meeting, and Dr. Melanie Taylor is going to make me write the word busing on the chalkboard 100 times.
I'm sure you meant kissing. Okay. Mark.
Folks, we did this in 2014, made the decision to put the school bonds on the ballot so you'd have a decision to vote for it or vote against it. Again, you at that table, the time's coming in March where you can vote for it or vote against it. We're not taking that away from you. But if you want it, you see how things that'll be paid for, you want to vote for it. Okay?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring out the fact that this is a first step on a long journey. And this is a public input meeting tonight. And we've got a lot of decisions to make, and we've got a lot of data to try to digest, to try to figure out what is the right thing to do. But I appreciate you folks coming this evening.
I just want to say I serve with the chairman now on our education task force, so we get the pleasure of working with the school systems and the administrations, teachers, and on behalf of the public. And I just want to thank all of you that came and those that may be watching. And I want to encourage those of you as a challenge to reach out to individuals that may today be a no, and let's get them the information they need. I think once they get to know some of you, I think once that they get some information they need, you may can flip them and show them the value of the investment. We respect and this board takes seriously all taxpayers' views in the county. And that's why we fight every day, all day, very hard to have balanced growth in the county. But I do want to say to those of you in the school system, in whichever way you are, don't allow people to devalue you. Don't allow people to make you a line item on a spreadsheet. You are, to some kids, the only parent they have. You are training our workforces. You know, you have to act. I've been in law enforcement almost 32 years in some capacity. And unfortunately, as in law enforcement, the teachers are tasked with being mental health counselors, teachers, parents. You are the lifeline to our communities. It is our responsibility, as the gentleman said, to provide the facilities and the safe environments for you to teach, for the kids to go to schools. And I want to talk to the citizens and let them know the schools are value. They are an investment because of economic development, because hopefully you can get the information you need. We want people to move here to retire and enjoy our communities and recreation and all those things, because we do respect your opinions. And I respect and appreciate everyone taking everybody's points of view tonight and respecting those, not disrespecting one another like we see on a national scale every day. As taxpayers, our board and the other elected boards, I know I can speak on behalf of our board, we've been good stewards of your tax dollars. We just repurposed through the school systems saved revenues from the last bond to address specific projects that are capital needs that would make this potential project less going to the voters. And one of the reasons that these projects would only require a 1 cent increase is because we are taking advantage of existing debt that's rolling off of our books. And we're repurposing those funds to lessen the impact, and in some cases, some people think a burden, but I want to use the word impact because it's an investment. You know, the jobs, the workforce development, the disposable income that our citizens have that can reinvest in businesses in our county. We failed a 1/4 cent sales tax last year that would have been the fairest tax in our opinions, because everybody pays that, not just property owners in the county. We didn't do a good enough job to get the information out to the public. Over 50% of those income, that revenue was paid by people traveling up and down our 2 interstates. So if that would have passed last year, we potentially would be here today without asking for a property tax increase, because we have debt rolling off our books that we're repurposing. As the chairman said earlier, the last bond required a 4 1/4 cent increase on our tax rate. This one's a penny if it's approved. But we're reinvesting your tax dollars and trying to hold the hard line on. We understand some people are on fixed incomes, but we want you also to understand it's our responsibility as you have kids in the school system and grandkids. You know, it's a cycle of life. People took care of you when you were that age, and we have to continue to reinvest and do the same thing. So I just encourage you to get the facts, reach out to the school systems, put a face at the end of a handshake, get the details you need. These are your friends and neighbors. These are your Iredell County citizens that have the same impacts and responsibilities as you do. And we value you, so please don't take my comments to either one of you that I commented to, but I didn't want you to leave the podiums with misinformation, because maybe you came from areas where that was what happened, but we take pride in trusting our people, government for, by, and of the people. We want you to make the decision and tell us what you want us to do. And we want to make sure that the annual audits through the elected school boards and the systems do make you trust those investments. So I just wanted to make those comments. I don't want to rehash all the things, but I want to encourage all of you moving forward. As Commissioner Bowles said, it's the first step in a long process. But I think if you'll take the time to look at the investment, look at what it brings to the county, even to people that are not directly involved in schools, whether parents, teachers, whatever, grandkids, it still benefits you. I just wanted to let you know that. So thank you for your time. Thank you for coming. Thank you all for respecting one another. We do take your opinions to heart.
And I'd just like to wind up with a couple of observations about some specifics. This is phase one of a 10-year capital improvement plan that was recommended by the facility task force. With this bond, we'll be able to take care of completely phase one. Mooresville Grady School District, all of their requirements that were identified were in phase one. The concern about, as Mr. Russo, the Harmony principals, hey, they've got some needs. Some other schools have some needs. They're not addressed in this particular bond. But they are addressed in phases 2 and phase 3 of this 10-year plan. They're out there. They've been identified. But if this bond is not successful, that doesn't eliminate the need that's been identified as a priority of creating capacity in the middle school at Mooresville and in the high school for South Central Iredell. You got 3 Army veterans here and a former drill sergeant, and we've been out on a range, and one of the things you do when you're on a range or you're teaching soldiers to engage with an enemy is you engage the closest target first. When the 25-meter target pops up, that's what you shoot for. When the 200-meter target pops up, if it pops up the same time as the 25-meter, you engage the 25-meter first. If you miss the first time, you engage the 25-meter again, because that's your close-in threat. And so that's what we've had to do, is to engage what our crying needs are first. And frankly, if you look at having to prioritize, the first priority is the Mooresville Grady School District Middle School. They are at overcapacity. They have rejiggered their class alignments to go from to have an intermediate school instead of just 3 schools, elementary, middle, and high school. They have intermediate thrown in there, and so they're constantly adjusting, to try to even out the peaks and valleys of school attendance. But you're getting to the point where there's no more, give in the rubber band. And so if, the what-if question that Commissioner Robertson posed was, well, if the bond doesn't pass, that doesn't eliminate that as our first priority. That means that becomes where our dollars have to go. But it won't go right away because that's $35 million. And we don't have $35 million. We're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way, try to save up. But by the time you save up, cost of building goes up.
And those kids will have graduated from high school.
Yeah, so as Iredell County Commissioner, the County Commission is by statute one of our jobs. Our only job, technically, responsibility, is to build schools for our county. It's the school boards that are charged with running the schools, developing the curriculum, recruiting the teachers, and all those things. Now, we give additional dollars to support operational expenses, obviously. But our sole statutory responsibility is to provide the buildings in which our students are educated. So that's what we're trying to fulfill here. And one of the things, my friends from north of the Mason-Dixon are a lot of good hockey fans. Well, if you're a good hockey player, you don't skate to where the puck is. You skate to where the puck is going to be. And that's what we're trying to do, to anticipate requirements, not just where we have overcrowding now, but where you saw all that development that was centered from Troutman south and to the corner of the county. There was a hole there, and that's sort of where this school is going to go. When we double the size of this population, That's where it's going to be. That's where people are going to be moving, is east of 77, south of 40. And so we are trying to anticipate those requirements. Unfortunately, we don't build roads, fortunately for us, but the state does that. Well, it's got $1 billion worth of funds chasing $8 billion worth of projects. They only build a road when you have horrible congestion. A lot of times people say, why didn't they think about building a road here when you didn't have to pay a ton for the right-of-way? Well, because the money wasn't there and they couldn't do it. We're trying to be ahead of that power curve. One of the observations I'll say, and if we have to do addressing Mooresville graded and a high school, that's just going to push out those phase 2 and 3 projects that much longer. So there's a vested interest, no matter where you live in this county, to support this need, because it's going to have an impact down the road on all the projects that we look at. The whole mega unit deal, one thing people forget is it's not just mega unit. You can add bunches of mega units, but you have a building that has a core support function for food service, for physical education, just bathrooms, all of that. Those are core support functions. Well, those functions aren't added on when you build mega units. Through mega units, you have to then crowd all those people into a dining facility that was built for half the students, and then you end up having to mess up everybody's schedules and have all kinds of terrible kinds of choices to make in your operating capacity. So we're trying to avoid that. Some of the issues that have been raised about, well, are we just throwing money down some kind of money pit and don't have accountability? Well, the John Locke Foundation, which is a conservative think tank that is very detailed in terms of what they look at and digging into the numbers, has consistently said that Iredell Statesville schools and the Mooresville Graded School District punch way above their weight class in terms of providing the best bang for the buck, that in terms of the product that is produced for the dollars that went in to do that, you get the best return on investment here in Iredell County. And this kind of, and I'll just wind up more or less saying, this kind of engagement is important. It's important to share concerns that everybody has so that we can get facts out. I used to think everybody was entitled to their own opinions, but they're not entitled to their own facts. Well, we live in a day and an age when facts are conflated with opinions. People get opinions from one source, and that has all their facts. We need to make sure that we are transparent, that we lay this stuff out so everyone can at least start with the same base of understanding what the facts are. And then, opinions can naturally diverge from there. But let's start with the right common set of facts and challenges. And what I would say is opportunities. You can look at something as a glass half empty or glass half full. It's good to have the problem of people wanting to move to Iredell County. Now, if they don't have school-age kids, okay, we don't have to worry about schools, but you know what we got to invest in then? EMS. We've got to get tons of ambulances because they have to respond to an elderly population, and the need for ambulances go up. And they cost $500,000, to put an ambulance on the road. By the time you buy the vehicle and get it crewed 24 hours a day. So no matter what, you're going to spend money on something, and we have to deliver those services. I would encourage the people that, people have a very strong, when you talk about educating your kids or your grandchildren, that's a emotional subject. I can't think of anything that gets people more attuned to what's going on than when you talk about that, educating their family, because they represent the future. But it's not just about buildings. It's what goes on inside the buildings. And that's what our school boards are tasked to do. But we have asked our school boards to take a hard look at how we prepare the students that are not going to go to a four-year university. You know, we talk about higher levels of bureaucracy in the government, and this is where, you know, there's a divergence of opinion between, you know, liberals and conservatives. But I believe that local control means local. It doesn't mean in Raleigh. It certainly doesn't mean in Washington, D.C. And when you look at what the guidance out of Raleigh's Department of Public Instruction was, hey, we need to shoot for having 2 out of 3 kids that graduate from high school to go to a 4-year university. That's horse hockey. You know, that's just not going to happen. You're going to have 1 out of 3 go to a 4-year university, and our school systems prepare people very well to meet that goal and to get them to school. But when they get professional degrees or whatever, do they come back to Iredell County? Not necessarily. Why is that? That's because before there wasn't a large enough population that was working here that could afford the services of accountants and lawyers and buying houses and enjoying downtown dining and all of that stuff. You have to have disposable income to do that. Well, there's a 50% of our student body that we need in this country to make stuff and to fix stuff. And today, advanced manufacturing is nothing like the manufacturing of yesteryear in textiles and furniture. It requires hands-on and minds-on. It requires somebody that comes in that has a computer knowledge and the ability to operate, complex machinery and processes. And that's a different form of education than just the 3 R's. We have to meet that need. And we have to be able to provide those kids with a vision for, the exciting possibilities they have where they can be doing the things that they want to do and do them right here in Iredell County. And that's how we're able to attract so many businesses, because we have a workforce that can meet their needs. But that's not a given. If we're not ahead of pushing the envelope, and we have been, we have a tremendous amount of school choice within our school systems. That is a pain in the you-know-what to manage. But it provides kids choices, and that's what they're looking for, and that's what parents are looking for. But they need to know what's out there locally and attract those good jobs. Because if they can get out making $45,000 to $50,000 a year in high school, they can buy a house, and they can live right down the road from you. They don't have to buy a 14 by 70 single wide and stick it behind in your backyard. That's the difference. We want them to live in Iredell County, and if they're earning that kind of money, they'll attract the professionals that have gone off to school and want to come back and provide services in the service-based economy, which is only growing as it is. So we need to continue to have this dialogue about what does the actual deliverables of school, what should they be? And so CTE, career and technical education, is a huge part of that. And so I think you're going to hear a lot of discussion about that and why we need to meet the needs of business and how to get that done. So I want to thank you all for coming this evening. I want to really thank you for the respectful way that people shared their opinions and their heartfelt beliefs. And we can agree to disagree agreeably at the end of the day. But I hope that we can find some common ground relative to, what the facts are and the problems are that we need to solve and the opportunities that we need to take advantage of. So with that being said, at this time, we will close the public hearing, and I would take a recess of 5 minutes, and I'm sure that the rest of our agenda is not probably going to hold many of you here. So thank you.
You want me to do this motion?
Resume the open session and to wind up after the public hearing procedurally, I think we have a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to instruct staff to proceed with the bond referendum calendar prepared by the bond council that is attached to my motion to begin the process for a March 3rd, 2020 bond referendum to be adopted formally at our next meeting on October the 15th, 2019.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Haupt. Any further discussion?
And that is just to set the calendar for the bond.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And there will be another public hearing in early December based on that schedule for a final decision about whether to place a bond on the referendum, have a referendum for the bond on the primary ballot. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Now move on to the consent agenda, administrative matters that were heard at our pre-agenda meeting, which I would remind folks is open to the public in this same room, held at 5 o'clock, usually dealing with technical issues. So I would ask our county manager, Beth Jones, to please tee those up for us.
Thank you, Chairman Mallory. The first item is a request from Thomas Sapp with the Mecklenburg County Young Marines to adopt a proclamation recognizing October 23rd through the 31st, 2019 as the Red Ribbon Week. That was a mouthful. And that was presented at 7 o'clock, but agreed by consensus to approve. Next item is a request from Planning and Development to consider calling for the public hearing on October 15th, 2019 in regard to text amendments to the Land Development Code. There was a request from the Finance Department for approval of a 3-year agreement with the North Carolina Department of Agriculture to provide space for the Forestry Service, which is housed in the County Agriculture Center. A request from the Finance Department for approval of resolution to sell county-owned property located at 4600 Harmony Highway and authorization of the process. A request from the Finance Department for approval of a resolution authorizing the sale of property acquired by tax foreclosure and approval of the recommended disposal method. And finally, a request from the Clerk to the Board for approval of minutes from the meeting on September the 17th, 2019.
Okay. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Commissioner Norman. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item 9, announcements of vacancies on boards and commissions. We do have one appointment to announce for the Recreation Advisory Board. That will be heard at our next meeting. We would ask that anyone who is interested to please submit an application. You can go on to our website, print out the application, and if you'll please forward that to our county staff per the instructions, then we will consider anyone that would like to serve. We have no appointments this evening. Is there any unfinished business? Hearing none, move on to item 13, which is new business. I believe we have two quick items. One as regards an ETJ appointment.
Yes, sir, Chairman Mallory. Last meeting, the county commissioners appointed a new ETJ member to the Mooresville Planning Board. And typically our policy is if there is a seated member that is willing to serve, then we defer to, we do that reappointment to try to keep the institutional knowledge on the board. We were not aware and failed to ask that a seated member if he was willing to serve again, and we actually erred and appointed someone new to the board and did not check with that seated board member that was in that seat. And he is actually interested in and willing to reserve, and I think Commissioner Robertson said he was interested in serving one more term.
Right.
So did want to bring that to the attention of the board and see what the board's desire was regarding this reappointment of the seated member. There is an option, since we did advertise and notice that opening. We do have some applications that were submitted. We also have the application of the individual that was on the board that's been serving for about 20 years. There is an opportunity for the board, if they choose so, to rescind the former appointment that was done at the last meeting And then if the board chooses to reappoint that seated member, they certainly could do so. But I did want to bring that to the board's attention.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, with you being out of town, I kindly took the lead on that position to try to research the general statutes, and I think it's just a procedural issue here. We kindly outpunted our coverage there. But anyway, I would like to make a motion that we rescind the vote that where we appointed Mr. Alan Selick at 105 Walnut Hill Court in Mooresville, 28115, and that we rescind that appointment at this time. Okay. So that's my motion.
There's a motion by Vice Chairman Bowles. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Yeah, if I can just say, it has nothing to do with his qualification, lack of qualification. Has zero to do with that particular individual.
It was a procedural thing.
And that was on us, not on him.
Yeah, we should have watched it a little closer. Yeah.
And I think we need to say again, our policy of our board has been to, if we had members that are qualified and have not done anything to disqualify themselves and don't have term limits, we typically automatically renew them if they have a desire to continue to serve, and we just missed that. That's what we're talking about.
That's been our long-time history, yes.
Is there any additional motion relative to appointment to that ETJ position?
I would make the motion that we reappoint Mr. Johnny Robertson, and that is at 3158 Charlotte Highway, Mooresville, and that we reappoint him to a new term on the Mooresville Planning Board in the ETJ position.
Okay. A motion by Vice Chairman Bowles. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. The second order of new business is a update on the airport taxiway dedication and expansion.
Yeah, I'm on the airport commission on behalf of the board, and the county manager Beth and I attended on behalf of the board and staff the ribbon cutting celebrating the new airport taxiway. And I just wanted on behalf of our board to publicly thank the work of the airport commission, our economic development teams, and the federal elected officials, Ted Budd, Richard Burr, Tom Tillis, for FAA grants that they have really helped facilitate. Our state partners, Vicki Sawyers, who's the senator, and Jeff McNeely and John Fraley, who are our representatives, and our counterparts for the city of Statesville and our board. People really thanked us there for our investment and continued support. And I just want to hit again that the economic impacts that investing in the airport and these grants have been phenomenal. Rachel Bingham is our NCDOT lady that has been very instrumental in getting us grant funding, because we have shown through our investment and the city's investment to continue supporting the airport, and the FAA has been good to us as well. So I just wanted to thank all of those people that were involved, and the ribbon cutting was yesterday, and I know we were all spread out at other events, so we just want to give you an update on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Haupt. A lot of that airport commission works very closely with the city council for the city of Statesville, and they, in fact, own the provider for the base operations there now. So they're more or less in the driver's seat, but we're joined at the hip from the county perspective in matching local funds to get these 90% grants that typically flow from the U.S. Department of Transportation or FAA or wherever they're coming from, to be able to provide much needed capabilities and improvements to the airport, which is a significant economic driver for the county. And as the Charlotte Air, for those you don't know, our airport is not in the Charlotte control zone. Therefore, while in some other local airports, folks could be sitting on the runway waiting to take off because they haven't gotten cleared out of Charlotte, in Statesville they can roll out on the end of the runway and go because we're controlled out of Atlanta. So it's a It's a significant savings in terms of time and aggravation for general aviation and some of the new carriers that we have flying out of the airport. So thank you for that update. County Manager's report.
Thank you, Chairman Mallory. Just to let everyone know that the Commissioner's Fall Retreat has been scheduled for November the 8th. We are still fine-tuning time, and we'll double-check with the board regarding setting that time, but it will be located at the public library. And one of the reasons we chose that location is so if you would like to go and see the improvements and the progress on the lower floor, we're working to try to get that complete, hopefully have it open by the end of the year for that at the public library. And also, I know that the board has gotten a lot of questions and comments and concerns regarding our new software for our development services and permitting software. And Chairman Mallory, I spoke to him a little bit today, and he requested that Mr. Niblock give us some information regarding the decision for choosing this software and the capabilities that it has, and give the board a quick update regarding that software. And he's done that, and I've given it to you that you have here. But just to kind of let you know that we have had some issues. It has not been a smooth transition, and a lot of those issues came from converting the data from the old system to the new system. Don't anticipate having those problems. Certainly didn't expect having those problems, but we did. We have been working diligently with a software vendor and provider to fix those problems. And what we have done, there seems to be a communication issue with pulling over the older permits into the new system. So if you're receiving a new permit in the new system, then that's working. The problem is with the old permits. And so what we've done, try to mitigate some of the problems that we're having, is we've brought back the old software. And so we're having to run dual systems. And some of the complaints and concerns are for those individuals or those contractors that have multiple permits. They're pulling new permits, they're working on older permits, they're having to pull and get information and check in both pieces of software right now until we can get that information migrated over. So is the staff. They're doing the same thing. So it's not ideal. We're not thrilled that this is what we're having to do, but we are doing it, and the vendor is working with us to get it fixed. I will say that we have gotten some, and we talked a little bit at a 5 o'clock meeting, but we have gotten some anonymous complaints, but the complaints have not been specific, and our staff want to address these issues and want to follow up and help people if they're having challenges with the new software. We're learning as well, and learning something new is not always easy. But if somebody has a specific issue, please contact us. Let us walk through it with you and see if we can help resolve that and address your issues. By the same token, staff has gone through and created step-by-step instructions that are on our website. They've been emailed out to anybody that we have their email address that's pulled permits. It's printed. It's on the counter at Central Permitting that kind of walks you through the step-by-step process of pulling permits and using the system. And we talked today about trying to create some training classes and hold those as well, just so people can come in and we can walk them through that as well. So with that being said, we certainly apologize for any inconvenience that this transition has created. Change is difficult, but we do believe strongly that this new software will give a lot of functionality that our previous software did not give. It allows contractors, from the convenience of their place of business or their home, to upload documents to permits, soil testing results, maps, plans, anything like that can be uploaded. They can submit things electronically and not have to drive to Statesville if they choose not to. They can still do that. We still allow walk-in traffic and submitting things and handing things in, but it does give a lot of online capabilities that our previous software did not. It also allows our inspectors, previously they were sitting and they were sorting the workload for the day. They were manually sorting things out, and now the software does everything for them so they can hit the ground running first thing every morning, which should increase productivity, and that, of course, is a goal. So there's a lot of different functionalities because this software is written specifically for this function, where the previous software we had was not. It was kind of an add-on of our financial package. I say all that to say, you know, there was a lot of software that was vetted, and we looked at a lot of different packages. We did choose this one because of all the functionality it gave, not just us, but our customers and our clients, that was above and beyond what our current software provided. But we are having some learning curve and some growing pains with it, and we are having some hiccups with it as well as far as the conversion. But our vendor is working on that, and we're going to hold their feet to the fire and get that fixed. So I appreciate everybody's patience, and I appreciate the board's patience because I know that you're getting hit with it as well, and I sincerely apologize for that.
Well, just to reiterate, if there's an issue that a contractor or a customer has with anything, they need to please let our staff know with specificity what the problem is. Because just generally, you know, complaining about the system without anything more specific doesn't give us enough ability to fix whatever the problem is or to show how to appropriately use the system. And it's a shakedown cruise. You know, there's Murphy out there always lurking, and he's landed with both feet on this. But our staff is working very hard and diligently, and at the end of the day, when the dust settles, I think everyone will be very pleased with the capabilities that they have that they do not have presently to be able to work and provide data information remotely without having to travel, both and our staff as well, because they're not having to, they can input information out in the field, and it will be immediately available, and you can check on the status of your permitting process much faster. So thank you, and please tell our building standards staff, give them our appreciation for the hard work that they are doing and how they're keeping us ahead of the power curve as far as you talked about all the building. Well, they have to permit all that.
Absolutely, they do.
And this gives them gives them some leverage to be able to accomplish more with less. Okay, we did have a closed session, an economic development. Did we have anything to report out? I don't believe so. No action there. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Commissioner Norman. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. We are adjourned.